In the late 1960s, hostile North Vietnamese troops trapped a team of elite American MACV-SOG operators. The enemy had both superior numbers and the high ground, yet the Americans and their loyal Montagnard allies refused to retreat. Staff Sergeant Jerry M. Shriver, known as Mad Dog, charged from cover to cover, unleashing fire with his unusual mix of pistols, revolvers, and a deadly sawed-off shotgun. As some of his comrades were wounded, they were hoisted through the jungle canopy into waiting helicopters. The enemy kept pressing, but Shriver fought back relentlessly, using every round he carried. One by one, his men were lifted out until he was the last left behind. When offered reinforcements, he refused, responding, "No, no. I've got them right where I want them surrounded from the inside." Jerry M. Shriver was born on September 24, 1941, in Phoenix Springs, Florida. Little is known of his early life, except that he was destined to become a decorated war veteran and a symbol of the fighting spirit, someone drawn to combat and to the brotherhood forged in battle. Raised on stories of World War II veterans who had fought in the Pacific and Europe, he followed their example, joining the Army as a young man from California. He proved his worth early, completing airborne school and becoming a paratrooper. With the 101st Airborne Division, the famed Screening Eagles. Soon after, he passed the grueling training required to earn the Green Beret of the Army Special Forces. By then, the Cold War was in full swing, and after France's defeat in 1954, the United States had committed to supporting South Vietnam against communist insurgents. The war demanded men who could survive in the jungle, strike hard, and disappear masters of unconventional warfare. Shriver was one of those men, and he craved the fight. Vietnam became his hunting ground, arriving there in 1966 with the 5th Special Forces Group. Shriver was tall and thin, with a narrow face and a presence that marked him as born for combat. Medal of Honor recipient Jim Fleming later described him as the quintessential wartime loner, antisocial, possessed by what he was doing, the best teammate, always training. Shriver was cold-eyed and disciplined, strict not to dominate his men, but to forge them into survivors and hunters. He was a soldier who lived for battle, spending his free time drinking heavily, maintaining his weapons, and studying the terrain of the enemy he was determined to defeat. Fleming also remarked, "Shriver convinced me that for the rest of my life I would not go into a bar and cross someone I didn't know." In 1966, he joined the highly secretive Military Assistance Command Vietnam Studies and Observation Group, or MACV-SOG, an elite force made up of the best soldiers from the Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, and CIA. Their missions were the most dangerous in the war. For the next 3.5 years, Shriver repeatedly extended his deployments, consumed by the battle and spending more than 1,000 days in Vietnam. He came to know its people well, particularly the Montagnard allies, and quickly earned the nickname Mad Dog, a title he lived up to every day on the battlefield. Mad Dog's reputation grew with every mission, and Shriver became addicted to the adrenaline of combat. He felt at home in the jungles of Vietnam alongside the troops, and instead of resting after operations, he often slipped away to join other patrols, hunting down North Vietnamese or Viet Cong strongholds deep in the wilderness. On one occasion, when he was supposed to be on leave for rest and recuperation, he instead traveled to the Pleiku Special Forces camp to fight with another Special Operations team. Most MACV-SOG missions remain highly classified to this day, but there is no doubt that Shriver witnessed things far beyond the experience of ordinary soldiers. The elite operators wore South Vietnamese tiger stripe camouflage and carried specialized gear such as Colt Commando carbines, state-of-the-art crossbows for stealth missions, and the latest weapons available. Off-duty, Shriver's eccentric, side emerged. He was known to swap his fatigues for a blue velvet smoking jacket and a derby hat. Even then, he never let his guard down. He was constantly armed, aware of communist infiltrators, and by that time notorious enough that the enemy specifically sought him out. It was common to see him carrying 4 to 6 pistols or revolvers of various calibers, ranging from the trusted M1911 to powerful MAGNUMs. In combat, his arsenal was equally unconventional. Like many in MACV-SOG, he often carried captured AK-47s, RPKs, and other enemy weapons, alongside a sawed-off shotgun, a suppressed World War II-era M3 grease gun, or a .45 caliber Thompson submachine gun. During his second tour, after a mission near the DMZ, Captain Jim Storter recalled seeing Shriver bristling with sidearms. He had pistols stuck everywhere on him, 5 or 6.38 caliber revolvers. When offered an M16 for extra firepower, Shriver only grinned and replied, "No, those long guns will get you in trouble. Besides, if I need more than these, I've got troubles anyhow." Over time, his eccentricity became more pronounced. In 1968, when ordered back to the United States for mandatory rest, he purchased a Marlin lever-action rifle, chambered in the massive .44 Marlin cartridge. He wasn't thinking of hunting grizzlies or polar bears. His plan was to use it in Vietnam to destroy bunkers and terrify the enemy with its devastating wounds. He eventually shipped the rifle to MACV-SOG headquarters, declaring his intent to put it to use against communist forces. As a platoon sergeant, Shriver commanded hatchet force units, secret teams composed of 2 or 3 American MACV-SOG members and 20 to 30 carefully selected Montagnards or South Vietnamese soldiers, trained in unconventional warfare. These indigenous fighters were fiercely loyal to their American leaders and followed them without hesitation. Hatchet forces carried out reconnaissance, sabotage, and direct action missions deep behind enemy lines, gathering intelligence, disrupting enemy activity, and striking hard in the most dangerous terrain of Southeast Asia. Their work was some of the most secretive and hazardous of the war. Hatchet forces often worked with indigenous fighters, their name reflecting their role as quick, precise, and deadly instruments of unconventional warfare. Shriver and his men excelled so effectively that Radio Hanoi once announced a $10,000 bounty on his head. During one fierce battle in which his small unit was vastly outnumbered, he was asked over the radio if he required extraction. His reply was calm and defiant. "No, no. I've got them right where I want them, surrounded from the inside." Although Shriver was a loner by nature, he was deeply devoted to his Montagnard allies. These fiercely independent tribesmen from the highlands despised the communists and possessed an uncanny ability to track anything in the jungle. They loved Shriver for his courage and leadership, and he repaid their loyalty with generosity, spending most of his pay on food, clothing, and supplies for them and their families. He lived, ate, and slept alongside them in their barracks, sharing their hardships as one of their own. Another of Shriver's closest companions was a large German shepherd named Klaus, whom he had adopted in Taiwan. He was fiercely protective of the dog. When he learned that some non-commissioned officers had cruelly forced Klaus to drink beer as a prank, he stormed into the NCO club with a .38 revolver in hand and demanded the culprits step forward. No one dared admit responsibility. After 3 relentless years of combat missions, the strain began to weigh on Shriver. He admitted he wanted to quit, but could not abandon his men and their families. He felt danger closing in, but pressed on regardless. On April 24, 1969, his MACV-SOG company prepared to raid an enemy airfield at Quan Loi, just 20 miles from the underground headquarters of the Communist Central Office of South Vietnam. B-52 bombers had already devastated the area, and now it was time for Shriver and his comrades to move in. Heavily armed but operating without reliable air support, they boarded helicopters for the mission. Before departure, Shriver turned to a friend and said, "Take care of my boy." He seemed certain it would be his last farewell to close. One of the supporting helicopters was forced to turn back, leading Shriver's platoons without crucial cover. As soon as they landed, concealed machine guns opened up on them, pinning the men down. Shriver estimated they were surrounded by 6 enemy platoons hidden in bunkers. Determined to break the stalemate, he radioed that he and his Montagnards would flank the enemy guns. Then, leading from the front, he charged through the withering fire. His men followed without hesitation, inspired by his fearlessness. With an Uzi submachine gun in hand, Shriver laid down fire as he advanced, while his Montagnards returned the same loyalty, covering him with their own weapons. When they reached the tree line, Shriver gathered his men. He smiled, nodded, and they hurled grenades before rushing into the enemy position. That was the last time anyone saw Jerry Mad Dog Shriver alive. In the weeks that followed, Hanoi broadcast propaganda boasting that he had been captured and executed, but no proof was ever provided. Cleanup teams sent to recover the fallen found no trace of him. He disappeared less than 3 weeks before the end of his 3rd tour. Officially listed as missing in action, he was only 27 years old. The legend he left behind was a few dollars, his loyal dog Klaus, and his velvet smoking jacket. Asterisk.